Welcome everyone. I decided to do a webcast to help you with your graphs for biology lab reports. And I'd like to start just by opening an Excel file. This is an empty Excel file, and I'm going to start by entering my variables. If you look back at your lab manual, you'll see an explanation of an experiment where a person would drink a bunch of Red Bull, and we would measure the effect of that Red Bull or the caffeine in that Red Bull on their heart rate. In that experiment, the independent variable is the amount of caffeine. And so I need to put the independent variable in the first column of this graph, and I need to put in the first column of this table, and I need to put the dependent variable in the second column. Now, in this experiment, my independent variable is amount of caffeine or the number of Red Bulls, and that really depends on how you want to present it. In this case, I'll just use the number of Red Bulls consumed. And we can consume, or we can have some subjects consume between 1 and 5 Red Bulls. The dependent variable, or the output of the experiment that we're going to measure, is going to be heart rate. Whenever you have a variable with units, they should always be included in your table, and they should be included in your graph in the axis labels. This is heart rate in BPM, or beats per minute. I'm going to assume that our subject is pretty fit and that his resting heart rate is about 60 beats per minute, and that having 80 milligrams of caffeine in a Red Bull increases his heart rate a little bit, and that the more and more caffeine that our subject drinks, the higher and higher his heart rate goes. The setup that I just finished in Excel is going to save us a lot of time. Just setting up this table with an independent and dependent variable in the correct order is going to save a lot of time when we go to graph it. Once you get this far, all you have to do is select all of your data, go up to the top of the page, and insert a chart. Excel will give you a bunch of different options for charts, and the one that I like to use for this kind of data is a scatter graph or scatter chart. The one that I just clicked on gave me a scatter chart with no line, and one of the things that I'm going to need in the final assignment is a line that connects my dots. So if I just try again here, I'm going to insert, I'll click over here, reselect my data, insert another graph. This time I'll select a scatter with a line. There, that's closer to what I need. I can get rid of the other one by selecting it and pressing delete. This graph looks okay, but there are a bunch of things that we're going to have to edit, little items that we're going to have to change to get it into a format that's good for biology lab reports. The first is that we're only dealing with one dependent variable, and that means that we don't need a key over here to describe what various lines or various colors on the graph mean. So I can get rid of that element. It's extra, it's unnecessary. Excel will put a title at the top of your graph, and we don't want a title at the top of the graph. Figures in biology and in science reports have a title at the bottom, and that title is called a caption, and I'll show you what that looks like in a few minutes. I noticed that Excel gave me a bunch of horizontal lines. They clutter my graph a little bit. If I left click on them, they're selected, and I can press delete. I also noticed that Excel didn't label my y-axis or x-axis, and those are pretty easy to add. If I go up to the top, I'll see chart layout. It gives me an option of adding axis titles. The horizontal axis title is going to go underneath, and if I click on that, I can add my title. Number of Red Bulls consumed. I'm going to select the text and increase the font size a little bit, because I think that given the size of this graph, 10 points is probably too small. It's nice to be able to read the graph. It's nice to be able to read the axis labels. So that part's done. Click here to deselect. I'll go back to the layout of the chart and add the y-axis title. This title is heart rate in beats per minute. And I'm going to increase that font size to 14 as well. And I'm going to increase that font size to 14 as well. There. So we're looking pretty good. I noticed a couple of other things about this. The labels on the X and Y axis, there's these tiny numbers. They're probably okay. You wouldn't lose any marks for having them really small, but I think it's better if we can see them. So I would increase them to 12 or even 14, just so that they're obvious and easy to read. One of the goals of a graph is to convey information in a really simple and accessible manner. It's looking pretty good. Excel will give you lines that are fairly thick, and they have shadows underneath them, and they're usually colored. The colors work really nicely if you have more than one line. For example, you have different dependent variables on your graph. But in a graph like this, all of that color and shadow is not necessary. If I click on the line, if I click once on the line, I can select with a right click and format the data series. And that's going to open up a dialog that allows me to change the look and feel of that line. Right now the line color is automatic, and I can select black. I'm going to print this in black and white. I think it's good to have a black line. The weight of the line right now is a little heavy. It's set automatically at 3.75 points wide, and I think probably 2 points wide is going to give me a nice look and feel. The other thing that we can select, and I'll right click again, are the markers. The marker style is set to automatic. Underneath here I can select little boxes or triangles or X's. Now it really is up to you what symbol you use for this line. I like X's or plus signs, but this is not. This is a style decision. It's not essential that you choose one over the other. I made them a little bit smaller. The marker line right now has an automatic color of blue. I'm going to turn it black. And under the weight and arrows, I think that line size is fine. The last thing I'm going to do on this dialog is go to shadow, and just to make sure that there's no shadow added to the line. Now I selected it, you can see the shadow appeared. If I deselect it, the graph in general looks a lot nicer and a lot cleaner, and I think that this is your goal. So I'll select OK. So there's my graph. It's very simple. Now that I notice, the computer automatically added a number 6, as if someone drank 6 Red Bulls and we didn't collect the data. Well, we don't need that there. It's extraneous information. If I right click, if I select the axis and right click on it, I can go to Format Axis, and I can tell it that I don't want the scale to go past 5. Now, when I did that, the computer automatically rescaled everything and added these decimal places, and I don't like the look of that. And I think what happened is that it used a major unit of 0.5 instead of a major unit of 1. So let me correct that. And now we're back to normal. This graph looks pretty good to me. I'm happy with it. What it's missing is a title or a figure caption. If I click once on it, I can go up to the menu and copy into the clipboard, and then I can move over to Word.